Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. 3 out of 4 workers suffer from loneliness. Today, you'll learn why this matters and what you can do about it. From our guest, Steven Van Cohen. Steven, thanks for being with us today.
It's my pleasure, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Steven, you've written a book, Connectable. And tell us, how did you come up with that title and why is it called Connectable?
The publisher, who is McGraw-Hill, decided we cannot use the word lonely anywhere in the main title or the subtitle because they were scared that nobody would be wanting to be seen with a book about loneliness. So we had to get creative to find a title that, is like a Trojan horse that's hopefully going to get people inside the book because they want to learn how to strengthen their connections and feel fully seen by the people around them, but not throw them off with such a stigmatized and shameful term that is loneliness.
And I have to say, when you point it out that way, I kind of agree with the publisher. It probably would be a book that I would lean away from or maybe not want to be seen in Barnes & Noble picking it up and flipping through the pages, et cetera, et cetera. So probably a good call. I will tell our audience, though, you're going to be shocked what you learned from Steven today, as I was, because I picked up his book looking and saying, oh, I'll just look at a few pages. And then all of a sudden I find myself in the middle of the book loaded with very interesting statistics and surprising statistics. How would you define workplace loneliness?
Well, loneliness, people think it's the absence of other people. That's not the case. Loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of connection. And loneliness is essentially the inadequacy that we each have based on the perceived connection levels that we desire. So for someone who is very extroverted, the way that they might feel lonely is going to be different from someone who's introverted because it's all about that perceived inadequacy, right? If I feel like I want more out of my relationships, or I want more out of the purpose of my work, I want more out of my leader, I want more out of the team members that I collaborate with, that's going to cause me to feel a sense of loneliness. So it's all about that connection point, not so much how many people are simply around me.
Are we that way because of TV, the internet? Are we just feeling lacking because everybody we see looks like a Kardashian or George Clooney or somebody?
I wish I looked like George Clooney, but loneliness is something that has been on the rise for a long time. And if you go pre-pandemic statistics, 61% of Americans cited that they felt regularly lonely in 2018. Our research, which was more than 2,000 global workers from 2019, 2020, and 2021, found that 72% of the workforce that we pulled feels lonely monthly, with more than half stating that they feel lonely on a weekly basis. So if you look at the data over the last 10 years, it's been on a very, very straight up trajectory. Loneliness is very much on the rise. And there are lots of reasons for it. The 2 big reasons that are impacting our loneliness levels the most, one is due to what's called dependency shift. So 20 years ago, if I needed advice on where to take a date, I would call a friend. If I had something break in my house, I would maybe go talk to a neighbor. And if I needed advice, I'd call my mom. Now, if I need to know where to take a date, I go to Yelp. If I need to fix something, I go to YouTube. And if I need advice, I go to Google. We just no longer need to rely on each other in the way that we once did. And that's created a whole bunch of space between people that used to be filled with advice and storytelling and sharing, different types of life experiences. And now we don't need that because we have the internet. So that's one really big reason why loneliness is, definitely on the rise. And then the other is what's called the catch of convenience. It's a lot easier to send a text or an instant message or an email than it is to jump on the phone. It's a lot easier to just Amazon what I need and have it get delivered to my house than to go into a store and rub shoulders with people. I no longer need to talk to a barista. I can just order my coffee on an app and scoop it up in the Starbucks. So the amount of time that we're just commingling with other humans has been exasperated, right? Like no human necessary in today's modern day era. So there's just a lot less time spent really connecting with the people around us.
And I just want to go back to the numbers you gave because I'm an old math teacher and impressed by those. you said 61%. So for our audience, to break it down another way, that's 3 out of every 5 or 6 out of every 10. And that's a lot of people to be lonely. And when we see a world or a big city or go to a mall, we say those people can't be lonely. Look at all those people. But you're telling us if we walk into the typical dental office, 3 of the 5 employees are feeling lonely on the average.
On the average. And what's important to know is that communication is different than connection. So the part of the brain that essentially registers the communication that we have is different from the part of the brain that registers connection. So we're communicating all day, every day, right? I'm constantly sending emails or having Slack exchanges, or I'm doing things to interact with other people. But the way that we feel connected is through what are called pro-social behaviors. Pro-social behaviors is when I'm empathizing with you, or when I'm able to ask you really meaningful questions because I'm genuinely curious about how you're doing. A pro-social behavior is nodding my head along so you can tell that I'm really paying attention and in tune with what you have to say. These pro-social behaviors is what allows 2 people to have what's called a synchronized exchange with one another. And that doesn't happen when we are just communicating through the digital mediums. And even if we're face-to-face at work via Zoom, typically our communication is transactional. So we're not using these pro-social behaviors as much. And it's why, we're experiencing such dire loneliness levels.
You're like going in the butcher shop. There's no wasted meat in there. You're not even meat and potatoes. This is just pure meat. And no, I appreciate it. But what you're telling us, and that's why your book, as I read it, I'm going, oh my gosh, this is real. This is just not a nice word to start the book and attract my attention. You're hitting on some things. And now on top of that, if we have to add some gravy to the loneliness problem, COVID. What did that do to this situation?
Here's the good news with COVID. There's very
good news.
little good
All
news.
right.
Is for me, right, in my efforts to bring attention and awareness to a topic that is very under-discussed, COVID created an experience that all of us can shake our heads in agreement with, has caused some levels of loneliness and separation. It is fundamentally impacted the way that we're working and commingling and just existing with one another. And it put a big old giant spotlight on this topic. And it's gotten this conversation a bit started, which for us, you said you're just in a butcher shop. There's no potatoes. It's all meat. And it's true, right? This is something that I really believe is a very, very big problem. It's a very big problem for the workplace and our productivity and our engagement, but it's a really big problem for our overall well-being. And we haven't talked about the biological ramifications of loneliness, but when we start to understand what this is doing to our bodies and to our health, it is really scary stuff. So yes, I will continue to be in the butcher shop, just carving up as much meat as I can, Bill.
And you definitely are, and that's great, and that's what makes it so interesting. Now, is this the same for, we say, okay, now we're working at home, and perhaps even more so, at least before we had to walk into the arena. We had to pass a few people. Someone might say, did you see last night's game? Or I really like your car, or that looks like a good lunch. Now we don't even have that. We sit down, go click, click, and your face pops up, my face. We talk about whatever business we're doing. I call up another client, you call up someone else, and we go on and on. Is that making things worse, better, or does it really matter?
Is making things a lot worse. The margin that we have to really genuinely just have a genuine touch point with the person next to us is being eradicated. And we used to call the water cooler talk something that was important. And now there's no more water coolers, right? Because we're essentially in our homes by ourselves, staring at a screen all day, every day. And unless there's a counterbalance, and unless you work for a company that is being very intentional to create time to have some of these connective experiences, I'm really nervous that we're going to continue to see millions of people be marched into a very deep, dark sea of loneliness.
And while that may be good for your business as an expert on the field, for the rest of us, and I know you have a lot of statistics, and in a few seconds I'm going to ask you to give us some of those. But Steven, at this point in the show, while we've got our audience tuned up and hearing what you're saying, I want them to know that they're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Steven Van Cohen. He's the author of the book Connectable. And Steven, as we always do, we're going to ask ask you where we can get this book and if there's a website where we can learn more information.
The book is available at all major retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your local indie shop, and then you can find more information by going to lesslonely.com.
And that's a great name for your website, lesslonely.com. And again, for our audience, as we always do, we will give you this information or ask Steven to give it to you later in the show. If you didn't get it down, as you listen, you're going to find out many, many more reasons why you want to get hold of this book. You want to be at least up to date on some of this information and what a difference it's going to make in your company. Steven, someone's listening now. There's a dentist office. There's a small law office. There might be a 40-person company. And I'm talking relatively small businesses. They're saying, don't I have enough to do? I'm worrying about this. I'm complying with this law. I've got to watch for this. I've got this client or customer complaining about, whatever. Why should the business owner be concerned? Why must they be concerned about loneliness?
We say that loneliness is not a soft topic. It's a dire topic. And there's some really strong statistics that back that up. So a lonely employee is 7 times more likely to be disengaged. They're 5 times more likely to miss work due to stress or illness, and they're twice as often to think about quitting their job. So there's a lot more statistics that continue to reinforce that this is something that needs to be addressed. But just those 3 should open some eyeballs, because any healthy workplace is a workplace where people are engaged. Any productive workplace is a workplace that has employees present doing work, and a long-term sustainable business is a business that keeps its talent. So if you work for a small business, and it's interesting, Bill, I actually had a couple of client inquiries come in this week, and one of them was with a medical office, and he is a doctor. He owns 2 practices. He's got 50 employees, and he said, Steven, I can tell something's off, and I'm really nervous, and I need help figuring out what to do. So small business, big business, there's definitely going to be some impact. And what's really cool, Bill, is loneliness can be lessened in as little as 40 seconds. So this isn't something that is going to require a full day offsite. You're not going to have to start doing a whole bunch of happy hours. This isn't a total shift in the way that we interact with each other. There are some really simple things that can be done in order to create more belonging and inclusion and connection between people. You just need to know what to do and start doing it.
I think I was in that doctor's office today. And honestly, I was not only did I wait 45 minutes in the waiting room, a crowded waiting room during these times, then I went into the little room, kind of the prep room where the assistant comes in and does a few mechanical things and says the doctor will be right in. And then as we got to 40 to 45 minutes, I opened the door and I looked around and I said, do you know I'm still in here? And I said, I can't wait forever, and I'm not going to. I'm going to leave. But I could see from the employees, no one was tuned in that this is a situation should be brought to the attention, that there's a whole line of people waiting to get out of the office to turn in their information from the doctor, make an appointment and get out. And this is both interrupting where the doctors work because the line is going backwards. It's causing people to get annoyed. And when people get annoyed, they talk about it. And did you ever wait this long? Why are we waiting this long? And you've got a lot of unhappy customers. And to be honest, while I love the doctor, I may go elsewhere next time. So they're losing a customer just because of a lack of personal connection. Like, I'm really sorry, Mary is out today, or Dr. So-and-so was called out for an emergency, or whatever you would usually say.
Well, let's just take that example really quick, because I don't know what's happening there. I've never been there.
No,
I don't know any of the people
right.
who work there. However, I would bet that if the people who worked there today don't care about their work, they don't care about their coworkers, they don't care about their clients, they don't care about the doctors, if they don't feel like they really want to be there, they don't feel valuable and needed and significant, then why are they going to go above and beyond to try to make things easier for you? They're just there because they need to be. And that's a very different experience than when you have a group of people who show up and they're committed and they care about each other and they care about the work. And that is something that can be built and curated if you know how to do it. And when you talk about, this seemed like it was kind of just a happy-go-lucky, we should maybe talk about this because it's a timely topic of loneliness in the workplace. It's those kinds of examples of these employees who really aren't giving it 100% that you can pinpoint oftentimes back to, they just don't feel really like they belong or are needed. So there's a lot that we can unpack even through little businesses that are overworked and extra busy.
And I don't know if it's because I do a show on business like this, and we've been doing it for 33 years, or I get to talk to wonderful people like yourself, top authors. But when I go into a business and I see actions like this, very often I don't go back into that business, which is bad business for the owner. And they might be wonderful people. As I said, the doctor is wonderful. I liked him very much. I respect him. But if I'm going to have to wait 2 hours for a simple routine yearly checkup and have the feeling that I'm being dismissed by the staff when I'm sitting in there 40 minutes and then waiting on a line to get out after I'm ready now and hungry to have lunch, something is missing. Steven, how does the boss know this? What should they be looking for? Because, again, till I read your book, I was not even aware of this. It could have been all around me and I wouldn't see it. So how does the boss know this? What should they look for?
Well, there's a framework that we use in the book. And the first part of that framework is called Look at Loneliness. And the quote that we use in the book that I feel sums up the essence of how to look at loneliness comes from Ansel Adams, the famed photographer. And Ansel says, photos are usually looked at, seldom looked into. And when I think of the leaders that I've coached over the years, they see their team, they're paying attention to what they're doing, but rarely are they looking into the team. And are they really starting to be like a poker player, looking for all the little tells that their people are giving off that are subtle indications that maybe something's up? So in the book, there's 10 signs that can give you some pretty good clues that your team members might be feeling lonely. I won't go through all of them, Bill, but the few that resonate with me, one is excessive work, which seems strange. You probably don't want to demotivate a worker who's putting in an enormous amount of time working at work. However, excessive work usually is happening because someone feels inadequate in their personal life, or they just don't want to deal with the relationships that they have to deal with. So they use work as a crutch, as a distraction. So excessive work is a really clear sign. A lack of learning and development, meaning that my team or certain members of the team are not wanting to learn and grow. They're not trying new things. They're not continuously improving. They're not building their skills. They're just seeming like they're very complacent. Another one is only talks work. So if someone's only talking about work, usually, again, it's a sign that they have nothing else joyful to talk about as it relates to their personal life. And then an apathetic attitude, someone who is just disgruntled in meetings, there's definitely signs of unhappiness that can be tied to loneliness. So those are some subtle signs in the book. Again, there's 10 that we detail. And on the website, lesslonely.com, there's a free download of the 10, there's 10 items. It's a checkbox document. We can go through those 10 items to determine if you or someone on your team might be feeling lonely.
And isn't it funny? We're both talking about doctors' offices, and the doctor looks at you, and even if you come in for one type of malady or injury, they might say, I'm looking at your eye or your nose, that should be checked. There's a spot here. Maybe it's pre-cancer, or maybe it's something that just should be looked into, etc. They look for small things. And yet they don't see this line of people waiting, standing in line to get out of the office, which is filling the office more with people during a post-COVID period and, people who are extremely careful about being close to each other, et cetera, et cetera. Steven, once again, I'd like to let our audience know if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, but our guest today and the person you want to listen to is Steven Van Cohen. He's the author of the book Connectable, and to give some credit to your co-author, Ryan Jenkins. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now this way he won't be mad at you and make an enemy of you. He'll still connect because we got his name in there, Ryan Jenkins. The book is Connectable. Steven, we're going to ask you where we can get this book and the website where we can get some more information and those test questions you talked about.
Yeah, the book is available at all major retailers. Get it through Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And then for information about the book or any of the free resources that we have, you can go to lesslonely.com.
That's a great website, and it says it all, and it's easy to remember, too, lesslonely.com. And again, to the audience, if you didn't get it down, we'll give you that once more before the end of the show. In about 3 or 5 days, you're going to say, what was that show I listened to the other day? What was that guy's name? You're going to want that information, so write it down just in case. Steven, I think I've read in your book that you have a program that'll lessen loneliness, I guess not cure it, but in under 60 seconds we can do this. Can you give us some hints what we would have to do in order to do that?
Yeah, so the statistic is under 40 seconds.
Okay, even better.
So I'll tell you a quick story to give you some context for why this is possible, because 40 seconds doesn't seem like a lot of time. The story comes from one of my clients, and my client, she lives up in Canada, and she is an empty nester. She lives by herself, just with her and her dog. And during the heart of COVID in Canada, when things were shut down and everyone was quarantined, I was having a conversation with her, and I asked her, I said, how are you doing? And we started to talk about my book and loneliness. And she said, you know what, Steven, I have not felt lonely one time. And I said, that's interesting. Tell me more. And she said, I've made it a point every single day when I walk my dog to smile and say hello to at least 5 other people. And she says, I keep a quota, and every day I try to hit that quota or exceed that quota. And she said, every day I've had these wonderful conversations with strangers, people in my neighborhood who I've never talked to before. And she said, just the smile and the acknowledgement that I'm here and you're there and you're okay and I'm okay. That's all I needed to feel like I was still a part of this fabric of humanity. And that to me is the essence of how people can start to lower their loneliness. It's by simply showing up and being interested in the people around you. It's smiling and saying hello versus looking down at your phone when you're waiting in line. It's having the courage to spark a conversation with a stranger and remembering that the interactions that you have don't need to be lasting to be meaningful. There's a lot of times where we rub shoulders with someone we've never met before, and it gives us that reassurance. It gives us a smile. Maybe they give us a compliment and it feels good. It's all about making sure that you and the person you're with are just feeling seen in that moment.
Steven,
you can do that for others. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have a dog, and I'm just thinking as what you were talking about. 2 dog walkers, you pass each other on the street, typically. Oh, what breed is that? What's his name? What's her name? She's very cute. Is she friendly? And then, about a minute later, I asked the other owner, why is she biting my leg? And is it bleeding? And of course, I'm kidding about the last part. But dog owners, we do that. And I probably do that twice every time I take the dog out. I don't see 100 dogs, but I'll see 3 or 4 other walkers. And if we're close or passing each other, or the 2 dogs look like they're pulling toward each other, it's a good opportunity to just chat with them and get maybe 3 or 4 routine questions that you'd want to know: the dog's name, the breed, how old are they, and it's also a way, as you said, to connect. And it's kind of an easy thing dog walkers have in common. So we have kind of an immediate bond. I know you had a lot of statistics in the book, and for people like me who are always impressed by them, do you want to tell us both work world and health statistics? Because there's an amazing health statistic that's shocking there about people who are lonely and what effect that has on their life. So can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, there's a image in the book, and it says if loneliness had a warning label, it would read, and it's just like what you would see on like a pack of cigarettes, right? And it has all of the health ramifications. And loneliness, because it's a stress-inducing emotion. So if I'm feeling lonely, the part of my brain that registers a fight or flight sensation is going off. And that means that my brain is releasing stress hormones when I'm feeling lonely or excluded or rejected. And we all know what stress is doing to our well-being. So loneliness has direct impact to our mental health, suicide, depression, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, schizophrenia. There's all of these health ramifications that loneliness is causing. And the very famous statistic around loneliness is that someone who feels regularly lonely, it's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's what your body is having to fight through with regards to the stress response that it's under. So that's all pretty serious stuff, I would say, as we think about the impact that it's having on our just overall physical well-being.
As you can see, it impressed me. And I think and of course, smoking 15 cigarettes a day leads to kind of a premature death in many of us. And that's the same thing as I read about it in your book. How about the person who says, I'm not lonely, I just like my solitude, I'm quiet, I like to do things by myself?
Yeah, solitude's amazing. We actually have a chapter in the book about how solitude is insurance against loneliness.
That's what I want you to talk about.
So now being alone is neither good nor bad. When you are alone and that sensation is negative, that's loneliness. When you're alone and that sensation is positive, that's called solitude. And when I mentioned earlier that loneliness is the absence of connection, one of the most important connections is with ourselves. We need time to reconnect with ourselves. We need time to be able to block out all of the attention that other people are trying to, hijack into our day-to-day so that we can restore our balance and our well-being. So for me, you can see in the background, Bill, I have a guitar, and I need 15 to 20 minutes every day where I can just relax, play my guitar, get centered, not have anybody else distract me. And that 15 minutes alone is really restorative because it's something I love. It's something that makes me feel good. It's something that gives me purpose and joy. And in a world, especially with, I have 2 young children, I have a wife, I have a busy job, I travel a lot. It's hard to make time for that. And we say you have to fight for it. But solitude is a really great thing. And it's something we should all be focused on. And making time for that's important.
Now, we think of the lonely person as kind of Eddie over there in the corner. He kind of never joins in. Or Sally, who goes about her business. She's an excellent worker. Nobody complains about her, but we don't know her husband's name. We don't know if she likes bologna or cheese for lunch. And we really couldn't tell if she takes the bus, the car, or the train when she goes home. Can someone be, not on purpose, but deceiving, look like an extrovert, look like they're mingling and getting into things and yet be lonely inside?
Yes. It's one of those things that's elusive. And it's hard to know exactly if it's loneliness or if it's someone who just wants to be alone, or if it's someone who's just having an off day, needs their space. It's really, really hard to know exactly in any given moment what that person's feeling. However, because we can't tell and we don't know, it's not like anger where it's really obvious this person is very, very, mad at the moment. But we do need to be a bit more inquisitive. And if I get the sense that, Mary every day isn't talking to anybody and no one knows if she has a husband or takes the bus to work or has a car, then we need to start inquiring a bit. And we should do a little bit of due diligence to see if we can pull Mary in to ensure that she feels connected to the group. Because if you don't feel connected to Mary, there's probably a good chance Mary doesn't feel connected to you. And you can use that as a litmus test to start to figure out, maybe can I do something to help forge this connection with her.
Steve Van Cohen, you've been great. We only touched the surface. There's so much more in this book. I hope a lot of our listeners go to the website and at least make themselves aware that this is going on. Before we wrap up real quick, can you give us that website again?
The website is lesslonely.com.
And if you missed it for our listeners, the book is one word, simple, Connectable. It's by our guest, Steven Van Cohen, and his co-author, Ryan Jenkins. Stephen, thanks so much for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
We want our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.